O seminário chama 12º Seminário Internacional Pais e Filhos. E diretamente de Paris, essa americana que é a nossa paixão, que é a Melinda Blau, que é mãe de Jennifer e Jeremy, é uma jornalista premiada que já publicou 15 livros. É coautora do best-seller A Encantadora de Bebês e de seu mais recente livro, A Encantadora de Famílias. E segundo a Melinda, ela falou que o tema do seminário, o que de verdade importa, ela usa muito o que é importante, ela fala no termo em inglês, what is important. Ela quis passar essa mensagem que tem muito a ver com esse segundo livro que eu falei, A Encantadora de Famílias, que eu recomendo a todo mundo. E a gente vai ficar com esse conteúdo que a gente já teve Melinda Blau aqui presencialmente no seminário, em 2, eu acho, foram 2. E agora a gente tem ela diretamente de Paris. Melinda, seja bem-vinda mais uma vez no Seminário da Pais e Filhos com todo esse conteúdo. Bom, gente, aproveitem muito e vamos assistir.
When I heard the theme of this year's Seminario, I thought, what a good idea to finally take a breath, look back at the last 2 years and ask ourselves, what did living through such a difficult time teach us about what really matters? Before I start, let me say that talking into my laptop camera is strange. I wish I was there to see your faces and to look into your eyes. And then afterwards, we could take pictures and give each other hugs. That's how I remember my time in Sao Paulo. I love you guys, and I hope someday that I can return in person. But isn't this a great example of how COVID has taught us to adapt? I may look at my notes from time to time because I don't want to miss anything. And also today I'm going to share with you what some mothers have told me about life during and after the pandemic. I'm going to talk to you about survival and resilience. And I'm going to end by telling you the 3 things that I think matter most. I don't know how and when you're going to watch this video, but if you have a moment, put me on hold and jot down what you had to endure during the pandemic for the last 2 years and how you handled it. What was the most difficult thing? What was the most surprising? The best times? Tough times teach us great lessons. My hope is that by looking back, you'll see yourself and your children, your whole family, through fresh eyes and for the better. But I'm going to start by telling you about my grandmother. My father's mother, I used to call her Grandma Sophie, and she died when I was fairly young, but I heard her story throughout my growing up years. And she traveled to the United States from Russia when she was 9, alone. She was one of something like 2 million immigrants who left Russia in the early 1900s because of poverty and persecution. She was the oldest and the most resourceful of her siblings, so she was sent first. Now, who could imagine that today? Putting a 9-year-old on a steamship alone. 5 days later, cousins she never met greeted her in New York. They brought her to live with them in their apartment with their 5 children. And then the next day she went to work in a glove factory. Now, in those days, well, probably still, they make gloves by sewing them inside out, and then they have to be turned right side out. So the children had little hands, and they were able to do fairly quick work with these gloves. So Sophie worked on the assembly line, and at night she taught herself to read and write in English. By age 14, she had earned enough money and saved enough to bring her whole family to New York, her parents and all her siblings. Now, I usually talk about my grandmother's journey to make a point of how capable a 9-year-old could be. But today, I'm telling you about her because it's such a miracle that she survived. Now, granted, expectations of children were different then. Kids weren't coddled. They were viewed as small adults, so of course they could be sent out to work. Nevertheless, it had to be really frightening for a 9-year-old to leave everything she knew and loved and start a life in a strange world. Maybe Sophie was taught by her parents that hard work was worth it, or maybe life in the old country was just so horrible. But whatever it was, something inside her said, keep going. Don't abandon the children, the people that you love the most. Life will get better. And it did. My grandparents were very, very successful in this country. I think many women are discovering that same kind of resilience in themselves and in their children as they emerge from COVID. Confinement was not easy for anyone, but especially mothers. One reporter called mothers in October of 2020 stuck-at-home moms. They were trapped. They were exhausted from childcare and housework. Some lost jobs, and others feared that they would have to quit work because the demands at home were just so consuming. Here are some quotes from mothers in confinement. I'm so sick of my goddamn kids. This pandemic has made me realize that maybe I'm not cut out to be a mother. I'm doing my 6th load of laundry today. God, every time I think I can't do this again, and then I do, I get up and I do it because that's what parents do, right? So if I was standing in front of you on a stage now, I would ask you to raise your hand if you felt the same way, and I'll have a feeling some of you do or did. Confinement was long and hard and scary. The good news is that many of us will emerge with new strengths. Perhaps you've heard the old saying, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. I didn't know where it came from, so I decided when I knew I was going to use it in this talk that I would look it up. And it turns out it came from the philosopher Nietzsche. In 1888, which was probably before my grandmother was born, he wrote about the type of person who, quote, knows how to turn serious accidents to his own advantage. And then he added, that which does not kill him makes him stronger. Modern research, psychology research, has shown that Nietzsche was correct. Studies show that some people come back even better and more resilient after a life crisis or a traumatic event. They call the process post-traumatic growth. The fact is that when we experience a crisis like loss, an illness, an accident, it shakes us out of the everyday. Such events force us to think differently and to focus on what matters. Becky, a mother in New York who once reported from war zones like Baghdad and Afghanistan, says that the pandemic, and I quote, felt like a war to me. Something unexpected happened that we couldn't predict. We had limited choices and lots of worry. And yet, she has come through stronger and with a new outlet. She says, I realize now that life plays out and we don't have control over a lot of it. It's better for my family and me to live with less stress. Difficult times can encourage us to open new doors and give us a deeper appreciation of life, but not as we're going through it. We're too busy coping, adapting, changing. We need a bit of distance in order to see how far we've come. Luckily, we now have that bit of distance from COVID and can ask, what matters? The answer depends in part on who you are. Each of us is unique. No two families have gone through the pandemic in the same way, nor learned the same lessons. To some, what matters most is putting food on the table. To others, it's saving the planet. Still, I've come up with 3 priorities that I think all families should put at the top of their list. Now, those of you who've read the Baby Whisperer books or Family Whispering know that I love to make ideas easy to remember. So today, I present you with the 3 R's. responsibility, recreation, fun, and relationships. Luckily, those words start with R in English and Portuguese. So let's look at each one. Responsibility matters. Being responsible means that you care, that you're willing to pitch in to make things happen. You know you're needed. You matter. Parents were often surprised at how responsible their children were during confinement. It didn't surprise me. Children rise to a challenge if we let them. Unfortunately, parents today tend to underestimate what their kids can understand and do. In many, maybe most, middle-class households, certainly in the US and in Brazil, from what you mothers tell me, parents try to shield their children from frustration and from bad news. They don't think their kids can handle it. So adults do all the work and all the worrying, and the kids are told, your job is school. I think that's wrong. And COVID forced many of you to see that your children are much more competent, capable, and caring than you realized. When I asked parents on Facebook what surprised them about their children during confinement, they used words like strong, adaptable, and were amazed at how, quote, willing to take risks their children were. Julie, a mother in, I think she's in New Jersey, whose sons were 11, 13, and 14 during confinement, says, and I quote, I learned about their depth of wisdom, their ability to have their words completely upended with their worlds completely upended with zero complaint, their deep love and longing for their grandparents, and yes, that they can kind of cook and kind of clean up. We also did a lot of talking about COVID, which was very scary for them. Julie is on the right path. It's a gift to grow up in a family where you're expected to participate, to help with chores, to plan, to give input about important decisions, to look at problems and help solve them, and also to talk about scary stuff. After all, your children are the adults of the future. How else will they learn what it means to run a household? How else will they learn how to cooperate and how to be part of a group in which everyone has different needs and opinions? If the children in your household are already surprising you by being responsible, great. Keep it going. Let them continue to participate and amaze you. And if not, or if your children are still babies and toddlers, change your mindset now. Allow your child to be responsible. In Family Whispering, I have dozens of age-appropriate suggestions. For example, a 5-year-old can feed the dog, make a simple sandwich, and help out by carrying packages. Don't expect perfection. Just provide the opportunities. It's okay if they kind of cook and kind of clean. They're learning. And the best thing about being responsible, and this goes for the adults in the household too, is that it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So when everyone pitches in, mom won't be the only one who notices that the counter needs cleaning or that the laundry is piling up. But family life should not be all work. Don't forget to have fun, which brings us to the second R, recreation matters. So many children today are pushed to excel in school, to join a team, to try out for the play, to join a club, to learn an instrument, and many of them are overscheduled. And it's taking a toll on their mental health. We've never had a time in history when depression and anxiety have been seen in so many kids and teenagers. One remedy is play. While being part of a team or learning the violin can be rewarding to a child, it's important for all kids to have downtime too, unscheduled and without an adult hovering, lecturing, or correcting them. Mothers, I know you know what I mean. And by recreation, I don't mean screen time and video games. Sadly, the pandemic gave all of us, adults included, too much of that. I'm not here to tell you that it's all bad. In fact, most of the research suggests that the positive aspects of online activities outweigh the negatives. And in some respects, it's really good for your child. Still, children need time to just be, to play alone and with other kids, to explore and learn how to socialize. Ideally, some of that time should be outdoors. Kids need time to be creative and let their imaginations run wild. When they play with friends, they learn how to take turns, to work out disagreements on their own, and how to compromise. And they discover that it's sometimes okay to listen to someone else's idea. Danny, a web designer in Massachusetts who works at home, was surprised that her 5-year-old never complains about wearing a mask. Maybe that's because she and her husband made play a priority during the pandemic. They listened to kids' podcasts about Greek mythology and dinosaurs. They rode bikes and scooters, and they had a family movie night every night. They sometimes camped in their own backyard. Danny says, we also installed a zip line and a trampoline. It's so over the top, she admits, but also so very, very fun. Many mothers of school-age children were frustrated by online teaching. While some kids adapted easily, others did not. Becky, the former war correspondent, realized her son wasn't learning much, so she chose play. As she wrote to me, we bailed on the Zoom classes for the last part of 2nd grade and went biking and hiking instead. My son got educated in life. COVID taught me to stop thinking about Marty's future when he's only 8. Whether Becky knew it or not, she was also prioritizing her relationship with Marty. An ongoing power struggle with a child trying to get him to pay attention, to sit still in front of a screen, had the potential to drive a wedge between them. So, in my opinion, she made the right choice. That brings us to the most important of the 3 R's, relationships. Relationships matter. They matter more than anything. And if we didn't know this before, COVID reminded us how it feels not to be connected. Months, for some of us, years went by, and we didn't see members of our extended family. We couldn't have holiday gatherings, birthday parties, and we also missed seeing other people, teachers, coaches, work colleagues, clerks, and all the other people that we encounter in a day as we make our way through the day. The reason it was so frustrating and so painful is because we need to socialize. It's as basic to survival as food and air. Relationships make us feel as if we're part of something bigger than ourselves, a family, a community, a country. Healthy relationships give us support, a safety net. As the old African proverb reminds us, we go faster alone, but we go farther together. Baby whispering and family whispering are all about relationships. Every interaction with another person shapes us and vice versa. We shape them. It's an ongoing process that starts at birth. For most of us, our mother is the first relationship. Secrets of the Baby Whisperer, Tracy's and my first book, promised to teach mothers how to calm, connect, and communicate with your infant. In reality, those are skills that you need in all of your relationships. The quality of our relationships determine the quality of our lives. Many parents instinctively prioritized relationships during COVID. They used FaceTime and Zoom to stay in touch, and to see family and friends in person, they improvised. In the US, many of us formed pods, little bubbles with close friends and other families whose children they knew from the neighborhood or from school. They were cautious. They met outdoors and everybody wore masks, but they were also creative. Danny and her family drove to a small airport near their house. She says, so we could watch planes take off while eating in the back of the car with the hatch open. We called it our car lunch and would often invite friends to come park next to us. In some households, to be sure, relationships suffered. It's not easy to live together 24/7. But in many others, family members got better at calming, connecting, and communicating, and they grew closer. Linda, a mother from New Jersey, has 2 teenage sons, and she said, slowing down from the outside madness made all of us calmer and more relaxed. Jack and his friends, Jack is their oldest son, who is 18, bonded more because they did Zoom chats with their friend groups most nights. A lot of times boys don't sit and talk. They just poke fun at each other and play sports. This actually brought his friend group much closer than I ever thought possible. Now, some mothers of boys would find that amazing. Now that the pandemic is hopefully winding down, we need to make sure that we and our children stay open. Researchers have found that those who are most likely to survive a trauma or a difficult life circumstance and come back better are those who are open and outgoing, which are 2 key relationship skills. When you're good at relationships, you're good at life. That's why they matter so much. Although some people are natural connectors, we all can improve our social skills. Do these 5 things and your children will naturally imitate you. 1, be interested and curious about people. Wonder about them. Wonder what they do. Wonder how they got to be how they are. 2, be willing to engage in conversation. Sometimes it's just a smile. Sometimes it's just a hello. Anything that makes you connect with another human being. 3, share who you are. Little bits at a time. You don't overshare and reveal deep, dark secrets to somebody you just meet, but you give little bits of yourself as you get to know the other person. It's like sort of peeling the layer of an onion, and you get in deeper and deeper. 4, be a good listener. I don't even have to explain that. Everybody says be a good listener. 5, and this is important, remember what you learned about the other person for the next time you meet. So this gives a sense of continuity to your relationships. And also, the other person then really knows that you saw him or her and you made an impact. These actions will not only improve your relationships, they'll make you feel better about yourself. So let me wind up by saying that you need to keep all 3 R's in mind as you move out of this scary time: responsibility, recreation, and relationships. I can't promise you that being responsible, remembering to have fun, and nurturing your relationships will prevent bad things from happening. But I am convinced that they'll make everyone in the family stronger, more resourceful, and more optimistic about whatever you face in the future. I just thought of this. They will actually lead to the 4th R, which is resilience. And so I hope you've enjoyed this talk. I'm going to use my imagination now to hear your applause. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope the next time I'm here, I see you in person.
Gente, que máxima Pais e Filhos trazer internacionalmente Melinda Blau. Foi sensacional poder escutá-la de novo. Estava com saudade da Melinda. E é o seguinte, A gente vai fingir que é ao vivo, mas não é. O ao vivo é o seminário, mas aqui a gente vai fazer um negócio e vocês têm que achar normal o que eu vou fazer agora. A gente soltou nas redes sociais, no Instagram, que iria ter essa palestra da Melinda e vocês poderiam mandar perguntas. E ela respondeu 3 delas. A primeira é, Melinda, como se ela soubesse o português, né? Mas a gente vai fingir que eu não sou boba. Melinda, você acredita que os pais precisam entender o que de verdade importa para eles mesmos antes de pensar nos filhos?
Absolutely. When you're on an airplane, they show you the safety features before you take off. So they tell you that in an emergency, the oxygen mask will drop down. But they always tell parents who are traveling with children, take oxygen first. Why? Because parents are responsible for their children's welfare. What good is giving an oxygen mask to a child if you pass out? As I write in my book, Family Whispering, families should be run like a co-op. Everyone pitches in and everyone is rewarded. But parents are the directors of the co-op. You have life experience, you have perspective and greater understanding than your children. You're better informed and you can step back and see the big picture. That's because your brain is more efficient and mature than your kids' brains. So you're the one, even though I want you to encourage your children to be independent and capable and to think for yourselves, you are in a better position than your child to figure out what matters most.
Muito bacana. E a Melinda foi tão generosa que tem mais uma pergunta que ela respondeu de vocês pelo Instagram, que foi: como fazer com que toda a família seja considerada nas tomadas de decisões e não somente os pais ou os filhos? Vamos ver o que ela respondeu?
Start by having regular family meetings. Think of it as your co-op's business meeting. Very young children can at least listen. And if you just have one child and it's you and your spouse, then put the infant seat on the table and you start the family meetings. I have a step-by-step guide in family whispering, but basically it works this way. Everyone gets a chance to talk about themselves at school, at work, the good things, the hard things. Everyone gets a chance to comment and make suggestions. But you also talk about what needs to get done to keep the household running. Who's going to do what? In my book, I have a whole section on what children at different ages are capable of doing. For example, a 2-year-old can throw dirty clothes into the hamper, help empty the dryer, and match socks. By 5, most children can dress themselves. And as young as 7, they can do their own laundry. Finally, family meetings allow you to get everyone's input about fun, like what to do for the weekend or on vacation, as well as more serious issues. For example, during the pandemic, many parents lost jobs. So at a family meeting, everybody could make suggestions about what it means to have less money, how you cut back on expenses, what we could maybe make or grow instead of buying, what we might give up. You'd be surprised at what good ideas even young kids come up with and how willing to sacrifice they are. Family meetings let children know they're needed and that their actions matter. They learn how to cooperate and negotiate and to respect other opinions and listen to other ideas. And these are skills that they're going to need to make decisions throughout their whole life.
Agora, Melinda, o que o pessoal perguntou aqui foi também, durante a pandemia, as famílias passaram mais tempo juntas. Mas isso não quer dizer que os pais estiveram mais próximos dos filhos. Como melhorar a comunicação e o diálogo em casa para realmente ouvir o que os filhos querem dizer?
To improve communication, always focus on preserving the relationship. Families are a tangle of relationship, different personalities and different needs, and sometimes they bump up against each other. So imagine a family of 4, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter. There are 6 different relationships. The mother with each of the children, that's 2. The father with each of 2 children, that's 4. And then the parents' relationship, 5, and the siblings' relationship. And that's just in 4. So you have 6 relationships. So what you need to do in your family is first look at how you're currently communicating in each of them. Start by asking yourself, am I really listening, or am I cutting the person off? That's a very, very important question. Second, remember that communication is a two-way street, a give and take. Choose your words carefully and wisely. Be patient and exercise self-control so that you don't jump to conclusions or overreact. But let's say that you feel yourself getting angry at what your child or your spouse said or did. In that case, give yourself a timeout. I know we're all used to giving children timeout, but sometimes it's better for the adult to leave. You could say, I really want to hear what you're saying to me, but I need some time. Go for a walk, read, call a dear friend and talk about it. Then when you're refreshed and a little bit calmer, reopen the conversation. Remember, you always have a choice. So before you say or do anything in a relationship, ask yourself, is what I'm about to say going to make the relationship better, or is it going to make it worse? This is the most important thing. When you communicate, you can't control anyone's behavior except your own. That's why it's so important to take that deep breath and ask yourself, is it going to make the relationship better or worse? If the answer is worse, don't say it or think of another way to say it. For example, you walk in the door and you almost trip over your 7-year-old shoes, or you're a tricycle. You're tired and you're irritable after a long day. Who could blame you if you screamed, how many times have I told you to put your shoes away? I almost killed myself. No TV tonight. Instead, take that moment. It's okay to be upset, but think of how you might say it differently. Not to be nicer, but with the idea that it might get through better. So you might say, wow, I had such a tough day today and I'm so tired. I almost tripped on your shoes when I came in. I know it's sometimes hard to remember to put them away, but I'd really appreciate it if you tried harder the next time. Now, tomorrow, you might find the same pair of shoes in your path, but at least you've avoided a power struggle. You're also modeling good behavior, empathy, consideration. And remember, kids are naturally self-centered, and we need to show them, sometimes more than once, usually more than once, how to pay attention to other people's needs and feelings. Don't get discouraged. Just know that it goes with the territory.
Muito bacana esse recado da Melinda, hein? Muito legal. E é isso, e ela deixou uma mensagem aí para todo mundo, se despedindo e agradecendo. É a gente que tem que agradecer, né? Melinda, você é sempre o máximo, um sucesso. Vamos ver quem que ela trouxe para essa despedida?
I just want to thank everybody for inviting me, and I want to introduce you to the only child that I had underfoot during the pandemic. And I did have to take care of him and feed him and clean up after him, but I'm sure it was easier than having a child. So I'm really happy to have been here, and I hope next time we'll both see you in person. Bye.
Muito fofo, realmente é bem mais simples um pet do que uma criança. Ai, maravilhosa, Melinda, o máximo. E Beto, me fala uma coisa, tem gente aí nos comentários falando da palestra da Melinda?
Tem sim. A Jéssica Anjos dizendo, ó, nunca mais vou esquecer a importância dos 3 R's, que são, né, vitais, né?
Jéssica, um beijo para você. Tá lá dos Estados Unidos, a gente tá muito international.
Né, muito international, nossa. De novo aqui, o Papai Educa. A pandemia foi um instrumento... Infelizmente, não temos controle sobre todas as coisas. E ensinar sobre resiliência com nossas experiências diárias faz de nossos filhos mais preparados para lidar com as adversidades da vida, que vai muito ao encontro do que a Melinda falou, né? Aí depois tem vários outros comentários e pessoas respondendo a nossa pergunta, né? O que de verdade importa.
Lê aí, vamos ver, tô curiosa.
Então, tempo junto, o que de verdade importa é arrumar um tempinho para brincar com os filhos e fazer da brincadeira um alívio para o estresse adulto também. Adorei essa parte. O Fernando Alvarenga, pai de verdade, diz, o que importa de verdade é a conexão, presença, estar junto. Um dia esse grude passa e os filhos vão trilhar seus voos, o que eu sou contra, né, gente? Não pode trilhar voo. Gianluca, Stefano, fiquem com o papai.
A apego.
Vamos aproveitar esse desafio, diz o Fernando Alvarenga.
Muito bem.
É isso, né, gente? O pessoal comentando muito, curtiram.
Ai, que bom, gente. Comentem muito, compartilhem, que a gente quer ler bastante comentários aqui. E agora a gente vai ouvir da nossa construção de pauta os insights do que a Melinda trouxe pra gente, né? E com ela, maravilhosa, Jennifer Dettlinger, que nessa postura dela, sempre a Jennifer fala, minha chefe, gente. Olha, Jennifer Dettlinger.
Eu sou muito internacional, gente. A filha da Melinda chama Jennifer.
Dá licença, gente, estou indo embora.
Vamos lá. Bom, primeiro Melinda deu uma aula e eu trouxe aqui, pegando um pouquinho do gancho dos 3 R's, que ela fala muito no novo livro dela, né? Encantadora de Famílias, que é responsabilidade, recreação e relacionamentos. Ela fez a tradução aqui para o português, mas eu separei as 3 metas que vão bastante de encontro com esses 3 R's. O primeiro é não subestimar o seu filho, que vai de encontro com a responsabilidade, que muitos pais acabam limitando as crianças, né? Não querendo dar tarefas ou protegendo demais. Então, a pandemia veio para mostrar que sim, as crianças podem fazer algumas tarefas de casa, tá tudo bem. E também eles vão criando uma responsabilidade ali, vão desenvolvendo, vão se frustrando também. Então, isso vai desenvolvendo a personalidade da criança e vai criar para a vida mesmo. O segundo é deixe o seu filho brincar, que é até um pouco o que as meninas do Tempo Junto falam muito, né? Deixe o seu filho brincar e brinque junto com ele também. Principalmente agora que a pandemia já está um pouco mais leve, né? A pandemia acabou privando as crianças de brincarem com outras crianças, então realmente aproveite esse tempo junto com o seu filho, porque passa rápido, então tem que curtir ao máximo. O último é entender que juntos é possível, é a missão da Pais e Filhos, e é o último L que ela coloca, que é relacionamento. Então, criar essa conexão familiar, entender que se a gente não estiver junto, não vai ter como. Ela até separou aqui um provérbio africano, ela fala, nós vamos mais rápido sozinhos, mas vamos mais longe juntos. E é isso aí.
Muito bem, tô até aqui, top.
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 Né?
Top.